everybody, I'm Jill Redfern and welcome to Third Shift Movement Shop, home of literal technique. This tutorial is about the basics of using the external obliques as a stabilizer in our dance technique. The external obliques are one of the four abdominals in literal technique. The other three are transversus, rectus abdominis, and the internal obliques. So this is number 4 of the four abdominals. The externals are stabilizers. They're also flexors and rotators of the vertebrae. We're going to talk about them as a stabilizer in our technique. If you haven't looked at the tutorials about transversus, rectus ab, and the internals as stabilizers, check those out. All 4 of these abdominal muscles work as stabilizers for us when we dance. So the external obliques, I'm not going to talk about their anatomy too much here. I did a tutorial on the basics of their anatomy. If you haven't seen that, check that one out. But I want to just do a basic reminder here for you. The external obliques are the only one of the 4 abdominal muscles where the muscle fiber attaches to the bone of the rib cage barrel, the bones of the ribs, the surfaces of the ribs themselves. The other abdominals all connect to cartilage on the rib cage barrel, but the externals are on ribs 5 through 12. If you don't know where your own ribs 5 through 12 are, find them. The easiest way to find them is to count from 1 down to 5. 1 is directly underneath the collarbone, but if you get down 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 is here. If you hit the xiphoid process, you've gone too far. That's at about the 7th rib. So you want to go above the xiphoid process if you can find that also. But we're going to look to the surfaces of ribs 5 through 12. Remember, 11 and 12 are the floating ribs. They don't come as far around to the sternum side of the body as the others do. But because they're down here, the muscle fibers have to come on a sort of a diagonal line in order to pick them up. So what we have is a muscle that starts, 5 is about under your armpit, starts about here and comes down on a diagonal this way. That's where the muscle fiber of the externals are. Once they hit here though, their fibers turn into an aponeurosis. The aponeurosis is what inserts to the iliac crests, the pubic tubercles, which are on either side of this pubic symphysis, and the linea alba, which originates up here and it inserts down here. It's that fibrous seam that all of the abdominals are inserting into, except for the rectus ab. It's just cutting through rectus ab. But we have muscle fiber here, aponeurosis here, and that makes up the muscle. When you contract that muscle, there are certain sensations associated with the contraction that you're going to want to be aware of. So we need to have some sense of where the muscle is in your body. The other thing I want to point out is when you talk about the aponeurosis inserting on the iliac crest, this bone here that you feel is right here. So when we talk about muscle or aponeurosis inserting on the iliac crest, we're talking about here behind this bone. So get a sense for where that is when you think about where this muscle is, or transversus or the internal obliques. Okay, 4 things need to happen when you contract the externals. First step, find the anatomical curve of your vertebrae. Don't start here, don't start here. We want to find the anatomical curves because we don't want to contract muscle on top of bone that's misaligned. Find the anatomical curves is number 1. Number 2, actively contract this muscle. Know where your ribs 5 through 12 are. Contraction of the muscle, the externals, is going to be felt up here, not down here between the barrels, but up on the surfaces of the ribs. Contract the muscle, know where ribs 5 through 12 are in your body. Third, when the muscle fibers contract, you should feel a narrowing of the ribcage barrel as if you've expelled air from the lungs. So it gets narrow, the muscle has contracted on the surfaces of the ribs. When that happens, the aponeurosis is going to compress back toward the vertebrae, both the thoracic and the lumbar vertebrae. The muscle fiber is up here. The ribcage barrel connects to the thoracic vertebrae. So the aponeurosis comes back toward those vertebrae. At the same time, you're going to feel the insertion points on the pelvic barrel move toward the ribs. That all happens all at the same time. Narrow, compress back, upward movement of the pelvic barrel. You should feel a new length in the front of the pelvic barrel. And then the fourth thing is, make sure that you are neutral in the lumbosacral joint. Again, if I contract muscle on top of misaligned bone, I will weaken my technique. This contraction has to happen on top of bone that is not misaligned. If the lumbosacral joint is not neutral, the pelvic barrel will be out of alignment, and that's the other thing you want to be aware of. So just remember, the reason that we are finding these muscles as stabilizers is to stabilize the vertebrae. So on top of all of the activity that's going on the sides and the front of the body when you're contracting these muscles, your awareness should really be shifting toward the vertebrae. We want to stabilize the vertebrae in their anatomical curves while we move the arms and the legs. If you can do that with all four muscles at the same time, you will free up movement of the arms and the legs and strengthen the muscles that move those when you dance. Okay, in your class this week, it would be great if you could start to play around with contracting all four abdominal muscles. If you want to start out with the externals because we've just added them to the group, do that. Once you start to get a sense of where these sensations are that let you know you've contracted these four muscles, to play around with when you're moving, are you dropping out of them? Are you using one and maybe 1.5? Are you using any of them? What's happening? And most importantly, where are your vertebrae? Where are the 33 vertebrae? Think about all of that. It's a lot to take in, and I'll see you next week.